Welcome to Leatherbrains, the podcast for fantasy football. Now, introducing your host, Hunter Slapdog Amaruso, and Matthew Scotty Holtmeyer.
And we're live, baby. We are live. Welcome to Leatherbrains. As always, your host, Slapdog, and we have a full house today. Of course, it is Monday for those of you who are listening live. If you're not listening live, it is Tuesday. Alan Casanova Castro joining us. Welcome aboard, Alan. Happy to have you here today.
Yes, sir. We're all back. We're here.
We're all back. And then Scotty Del Rey's making an appearance. Scotty has been doing a lot of the back end writing. Nice. His fingers, he does some back end.
A lot of back end with his fingers.
He's doing
a lot of back end shit.
Nice.
But it's good to have you here, Scotty. We're happy to have you here. It's been a while, I think, since you've been on with a group of people. So it's good to have producer Scotty in the building.
Yes,
gentlemen.
Sir.
Some NFL things happen, but before we go down that road, I have to ask you a question. Have you tried the new Tostinos chips, the habanero flavored chips? They're absolutely delicious. And if not, highly recommend you do that. No free ads. This is we are not endorsed by Tostitos, but they are freaking delicious. So I'm just telling you guys, if you haven't tried them, they're
Tostitos?
Tostitos. I'm going to tell you right now, they are the best chip. They're better than Doritos. They're better than.
Wow, are they better than On the Border?
Okay, so they're different, right? Because these are they're Tostitos chips, and I think that they are they advertise you can dip them and stuff. You don't need to dip them in anything. They're just so it would be different because On the Border chips, while I would eat them, I'm gonna say raw. While I would eat them raw,
they don't big fans of raw around here. No, I often.
I think we lost him.
I'm looking at the bag. They look like Doritos.
They look like Circle Doritos. Scotty, we didn't hear anything that you said. You broke.
Yeah, I know. I'm also having internet issues, so I might do that from time to time. I did an internet speed test, and it said your internet is just fine. So, okay.
For what?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what.
Your internet's just fine for receiving and email.
I was really interested to hear what you had to say about whatever you were about to say.
Oh, I went on to say that I have a bag of On the Border chips sitting right next to me. I was eating raw just the other day.
You were raw dogging some Border chips. Man.
They're definitely better with salsa, but they're good.
Raw. Oh, they are good. And
headline of this episode,
Tostitos chips. No, the habanero, baby. If you guys like a little spice, I am telling you, they are the best flavored chip I think I've ever had.
I'm looking at them right now.
They're very good. I highly recommend them. No free ads.
They're SNAP and EBT eligible, if you're wondering. So
I don't know what that means, but they are spicier than shit, and they're absolutely delicious. And honestly, you don't need to dip anything with them. You can raw dog that bag of chips, and you will absolutely you would adore yourself while consuming them.
All right.
Okay, now that we've got that out of the way, we had the divisional round weekend. There's quite a few stories, quite a few narratives that I think we need to explore today. Did anybody else have anything that they wanted to bring to the table before we actually start talking about NFL football?
Are we sure?
This is bad, man.
Matt,
I hope he's doing okay over there.
Matt, yeah.
He looks like he's got lazy eyes.
Hold on. This should be a lesson. What this podcast needs is a good sponsor. Number one, we need to fix his internet.
Yeah,
So this podcast is yearning for any kind of sponsor at all. I don't care who it is. We'll even play those Burger King Whopper commercials every 30 seconds if we need to.
They have welcome back, Scotty. They do have some of the best marketing. He just left again. He doesn't want to be a part of this.
This episode's in shambles.
I know it is absolutely in shambles. Burger King has the best marketing though. Every time that commercial comes on, and it's like a joke because it's at the worst time ever. Those commercials come on.
Yeah,
you sing it every time. I sing it every time. I don't know if you also sing it every time, but I end up like BK.
No, so I don't know if I've ever said this out. I generally don't put sound on when I'm watching the game.
Are you a maniac or are you insane?
No, I know what I'm watching. I can see what I see. I don't need Joe Buck or anybody else to tell me what's going on. I know.
Joe Buck Joe Buck is not the worst narrator though. I would Tony Romo takes the cake for me. I can't stand him.
No, and he doesn't. He didn't do Josh Allen any favors giving him the nickname Mr. January, and now everybody's piling on the Bills like, oh, he's Mr. January, he's Mr. January. And the Bills fans, if you read, they're like, fuck, we never asked for that nickname.
Like,
what are you doing?
Tony Romo, you just screwed us over, man.
Oh, well, it's the same with Collinsworth and Mahomes that we have to deal with. Like, that's why I don't listen. So I don't listen. So everybody's like freaking, oh, can you believe he said that? I'm like, no, because I'm not even listening. So I don't really care.
And Scotty's not here at the moment, which is actually beneficial for what I'm about to say. I don't mind like Kirk Herbstreit. I don't mind Kirk Herbstreit. I think there's other worse people out there. I really do.
He's like bread, just like plain white bread. And I don't mean that in any racial sense other than it's just bread. There's nothing on it.
It's not toasted. It doesn't have any oats on it. It's just a plain old slice of bread.
It's just bread. Fine. Like, it serves its purpose. It does okay. It doesn't annoy you too much. It's just kind of there.
But there's bread out there that I don't fucking like, and its name is Tony Romo. I can't fucking stand Tony Romo. I can't stand the dude.
He's the double wrapped bread that has like clusters in it that you're like have to crunch through bread.
Yeah, and like you get a knife out to try and cut it, and it just makes a fucking mess everywhere. That's Tony Romo in a nutshell, or in a bread shed, rather.
Christy buys that stuff for the kids, and it's
really?
And I try to eat it, and I'm like, this is awful. What happened to just like Wonder Bread? What happened to just like shit that I could just
like, this isn't good for you, but it tastes
fine,
it's
much better sandwich overall. Yeah. So maybe we can get sponsored by Wonder Bread.
Wonder Bread, Tostinos, anybody. We were looking for sponsorships because Scotty's internet is horrible. So
he's down bad.
He's down really bad. Let's start talking about it, Alan. Are you ready to get down to some business?
Let's do it.
All right.
Let's get down to business.
I'm actually kind of sad that Scotty's not here to kick this one off because I think part of the reason he joined us today is because he wanted to talk about this game. I have two resident Chiefs fans here. Chiefs Jags, baby, 27-20. Chiefs get the win. What a game. You know, we kind of called this. We talked about this last week, both on and off the show, and we talked about how close this game was potentially going to be. Like, the Jaguars do look like a pretty damn good team. They keep things interesting. The Chiefs have not been firing on every single cylinder as of recently. And then, of course, you have the Patrick Mahomes injury. So, I mean, you as a Chiefs fan, what is going through your head right now?
That's kind of like every Chiefs game this year. It's like start out good, some shit happens for 2.5 quarters, and then the Chiefs end it. And it's like, it's always that same formula. And that was the formula for this game. I mean, I'm not going to say if Pat was healthy the whole time that this wouldn't have been a bigger deal, because Henny, our boy, he led a drive of 98 yards, and that was very, very well, very needed, very well done. Honestly, I think if that drive doesn't happen, I think that game goes much differently for the Chiefs, because I think everybody stops believing that they can win at that point. The Jags. I mean, there was blood in the water, you could tell, and they wanted it, and they were pressing on the gas. So I think the Chiefs, I wouldn't say they're lucky. I think it shows that they can win in different ways. They can win when Mahomes seems to snap his leg in half and nobody knows what's going on, and they can kind of keep it together for a little bit, which in pressure playoff situations is different than week 2.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was a win. It was the Jags, not writing too much into it. They were the better team on paper. They did win. I mean, that was it.
Well, I mean, of course, you've got Patrick Mahomes. He suffered a high ankle sprain early in this game, and he left the game for maybe that half of a quarter right before halftime. And like you mentioned, Henny ended up doing a 98-yard drive for a touchdown. But Patrick Mahomes was clearly in pain throughout because he forced himself to. He said, "I'm going in." There was some sideline views of him audibly, you know. I'm sure there was some cuss words in there and some profanity and quote unquote, "I am fucking going in this game." Him yelling at Andy Reid. He went into the tunnel. So there was a lot of speculation going into halftime. Is Patrick Mahomes? Scotty, welcome back, brother. We're talking about the Chiefs game. So welcome. This is a good time for you to be here. But the question at hand is, like, what does this look like next week? Because very obviously, he came out at the end of the second quarter, or starting the second quarter, or second half, Jesus. And He was playing on it, and he did not look like 100%.
No.
We didn't see the mobile side of Patrick Mahomes that is able to extend plays with his feet. He was very injured in the pocket. He did okay, but he didn't look like the late and great Patrick Mahomes that is able to kind of wear the magician's hat. So what does this look like going into next week? Because I think that's what a lot of people are really concerned about.
Yeah. I think you look ahead to, and I know we'll talk about the Bills and the Bengals, but they get the Bengals next, and everything the Bengals do well, the Chiefs do not, or have question marks. Their tackles are terrible, and the Bengals have two amazing edge rushers. And if Mahomes is a statue, it's going to have to be short, quick passing, which may not be the worst thing in the world, because every time they played the Bengals, they like to have these long, drawn-out passing plays. So I don't know. I'm not very optimistic. A fully healthy Mahomes, I wouldn't be like super optimistic about this game anyways. And I know I said it in the group chat. I'm going to drop a considerable amount of money on the money line for the Bengals. I got to hedge my happiness. And I'm going to do it. I think they're going to win. I mean, I thought they were going to win anyways if we had to play them. Yeah, the Bengals. Yeah. I don't like the matchup. It's a bad matchup for them, for the Chiefs overall. I just don't like it.
But listen. Think about
Adam Neal's was too bad the Chiefs season is over.
Yeah, so Adam Neal, you're banned from the show. You can leave.
He's a Packers fan.
I just want to say the narrative is building in such a beautiful way. The Chiefs are going to come back out.
Into the
Chiefs are going to come back out. They have an injured star quarterback who's going to showcase his unbelievable talent despite the injury. They're coming back in a revenge game for a ticket to the Super Bowl. The narrative is writing itself. Blind optimism has been my strategy and will continue to be my strategy. I'm looking forward to it.
Don't buy the juice, baby. Don't do this, Scotty, because I like Allen's tactic, because no matter what, you choose happiness. You either have the Chiefs go to the Super Bowl or you get a bunch of money. And I think
that's a tactic for a loser. No,
that's a tactic for a smart man, because that's exactly what I think is going to happen. The Bengals looked good, and we'll touch on that game here as the show progresses, but the Bengals looked very good. And bottom line, the Chiefs did not. That's just that is the God's honest truth.
They got lucky. The Jags were driving, got a fumble in the red zone. That doesn't always happen. If the Bengals don't turn the ball over, straight up 100% Mahomes, this game would be difficult to win. And Bengals don't turn the ball over a ton. Not as recently. Like Burrow's interception woes have kind of calmed down, and they're clicking. I mean, they got a chip 100%. On their shoulder. They're pissed off. Like I hear the revenge thing, but that other team is loaded with talent.
Jones is going to get 3 sacks, force 1 fumble. Burrow's going to throw another an interception because of the pressure and his terrible offensive line that just so happened to do fine last week. It'll be fine.
Jeez.
I hope that happens. That would be cool. Clip it and ship it if it's
would you rather win the money or have the Chiefs go to the Super Bowl? That's the real question for a Chiefs fan.
Oh, I'd rather them go to the Super Bowl.
All right.
Well, I would pay if somebody came to me and said, "Hey, Alan, $250 and the Chiefs will go to the Super Bowl." I'll be like, "Yeah, okay."
How much money would that question have to be before you say no?
I love this game. I don't know. I can't say it too loud because Chrissy would probably kill me, but it's probably an exorbitant amount of money.
Like 4 figures? Like $1,000.
I think $1,000 is easy. What about like $10,000?
I wouldn't tell Christy, but yeah, I would do it.
Yeah. What about you guarantee they win the Super Bowl? $30,000?
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably my max.
No,
I would sell some stock and just kind of leverage it. Like, yeah, whatever. I don't know who that money goes to in this hypothetical.
If you knew though, then you could just bet you could bet money line and just roll with it too.
Wow.
True. If I knew yeah, that's true. I would just get my money back by betting. Yeah, that's fine.
Loopholes.
Nah.
Loopholes.
Yeah, the game was okay. It was like, I don't know. It was very nerve-wracking for a long period of it. I think the skill players came out. You saw Pacheco, that run where he's like, you could tell, like, I wonder what he was saying to himself while he was running. Like,
he's somebody who talks to themselves while they're running, and and then he goes on the sideline and he does some cocaine, and then he comes out and does it again. The man does not. He's juice. He's just all juice, and it's just go 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 go.
Yeah,
he holds the record for the fastest shower in mankind. He does nothing at less than full speed. Nothing.
Yeah, Yeah,
Like,
they're going to need that next week.
Yeah, they will. And I'm interested. We've talked about this in preseason or not preseason, but during the regular season. And we talked about the Chiefs as well as the Bills. And like I said, we are going to cover the Bills, and I'm really interested to have that conversation. But while we're focusing on the Chiefs historically, over the last couple of years in the Patrick Mahomes era, have not been running the ball. So my question to you guys is, do we think we see more of a run-centric offensive focus this week against the Bengals due to the fact that Patrick Mahomes will not be playing at 100%?
Yeah, that's what we saw at the end of this game. They ran the ball 30 times and passed the ball 27 times in this game, and that's, I would guess, in large part due to the Patrick Mahomes injury in the second half. So I think we're going to see more of the same there. I think Pacheco is going to be a big part of this offense, and we're going to see a lot of one-step drops, a lot of screens, a lot of slants, that sort of thing.
That's kind of what I'm expecting. I think that, and if worse comes to worse, a high ankle sprain, this is not magic. That's what Patrick Mahomes has. This is not going to be healed. This is something that it does not take just a week and then you're magically all done up and ready to go. He's going to be playing. He's going to be playing in pain. I look at this in two different fashions. I look at it from a player's perspective, not Patrick Mahomes, but his teammate. That man's got some dog in him. He's got some straight dog. Like, he goes up to Andy Reid and says, I'm fucking playing. Get me back in there. That's a leader. That's somebody I would want to be playing with. But on the flip side of the coin, how much is it going to hinder us as an offense? Because, and I think that's the fine line that Coach Reid is going to have to ride throughout the entire game versus the Bengals. At what point we maybe have that thought, okay, we need to pull Patrick Mahomes, because very obviously he's not. I mean, he's playing at a high enough level that we're going to find success.
Yeah, this happened in the Super Bowl against the Bucks, where he came in where he had that foot problem and he could barely walk on it, and we saw what happened. Like, he can't get out of the way. It's easier to play against him because he can't create anything anymore. It has to happen on schedule or it's not happening. And a lot of what this offense does is there's a couple reads, obviously, but then something happens off schedule every drive. And if he can't do that, I'm not optimistic, I would say, as you can hear.
I think that injured Patrick Mahomes is a top 20 quarterback in the league still.
I don't know.
I love having Matt back.
Yeah, Matt's just like, yeah, fuck it. Go Patrick Mahomes.
I love this.
Let's lose the blind optimism for a second and talk about a different team here, the Jaguars. If you're a Jaguars fan, you are a fan of Sarah Jessica Parker, a.k.a. Sunshine, a.k.a. Trevor Lawrence, a.k.a. Waffle House Daddy. But you lose this game 27-20, right? If you would have told me at the very beginning of the NFL season that the Jaguars were going to be contending for the divisional championship, I would have laughed in your face. I would have been like, there's no fucking way. So very obviously, there's got to be some optimism from Jaguars fans moving into next season, right? I mean, that's a fair thing to be thinking?
Yeah, 100%. I noted it in the article here, but all of the Jags offensive leaders are under the age of 25. You're talking about, Trevor Lawrence, Zay Jones, Etienne, all these young guys that led the offense as they moved their postseason push. They have no reason to be sad about this. They are in a great position, and especially if you look at where they were at this time last year, this is like a miracle over there. And I think we're going to be seeing a lot of Jags over the next few years.
Yeah, Trevor Lawrence has looked great. Very obviously, I think that we need to know that Calvin Ridley will be wearing a Jaguars uniform this upcoming season. They need wide receiver help. I think that is kind of a fair thing to say. Christian Kirk got paid as a wide receiver one. He's been kind of in and out of usability for this team. At times he shows greatness, and at times he's nowhere to be found. Zay Jones has actually looked pretty damn good. Obviously, Calvin Ridley's back. I want to say Zay Jones is a free agent moving into this offseason. Calvin Ridley hasn't played football in almost 2 years. He's kind of like Deshaun Watson in that way. So, and I'm sure we'll cover this a lot in the offseason for fantasy football purposes, but is there some skepticism regarding Calvin Ridley?
Kind of. I would say if you were going to put Calvin Ridley back in the lineup on a lot of teams in the league, I would be more worried. But I think he comes in here and just as a natural talent is a wide receiver one, assuming that he hasn't lost like 50% of his playability. I think he's going to come in and make a really big impact for them, especially considering, like you said about Christian Kirk, he had a good season, but not the season that's worth what they're paying him. And so I think him as sort of that ancillary role with a true wide receiver one there is going to benefit him as well, as opposed to him taking on all of the primary coverages and all that stuff for defenses that they play. You know, we saw Christian Kirk thrive when he was playing subpar secondaries. He did really, really well. But the second they start playing a pretty good defense, that's when you see him shut down and you start seeing him getting, 3 and 4 receptions for 40 yards. So I think it'll benefit him as well. I do think Calvin Ridley coming back is going to make a pretty big positive impact on the offense.
Yeah, and then you've got Travis Etienne, of course, and he was eaten all season. So overall, I mean, this team, there's an outlook that is positive for the future. Urban Meyer did not smear this organization into the ground.
I was just gonna say, every successful game they had towards the end of this year, how much worse does that look for Urban? Every time
100%.
Like
100%.
Every time.
He was more focused on beating the shit out of his kicker, which, we'll get to Brett Maher, but maybe there's some underlying truth there. And then touching girls and bars. That was kind of Urban Meyer's focus.
Doug's a good coach. I think the Jags, I think they'll be good. You have to remember, each season's in its own time capsule. Everybody wants to extrapolate and be like, oh, we made it to the divisional. Why can't we make it again? And as the Bills, we'll get into that game. And I know their fans are down bad, but every season has its own thing. Every playoff has its own matchup nightmare. And I think the Jaguars are set up, but they got to keep building. Like, I don't think they snuck in, right? It took them to the very last week to just get into the playoffs. They had a miracle comeback against the Chargers. And I think they very easily could have won this game, but it's the NFL. Like, any of these teams can win any of these games. Like, you can see, any given Sunday, right? And so I think they need to keep building. I think they need to keep building around Trevor. I think Calvin could be interesting, but I wouldn't rest on it. But I'm encouraged, and that division's winnable, but just kind of like tempering expectations. Like, yes, but it's not automatic that you're just going to be in the playoffs next year either. You got to keep building.
Well, let's change our focus here for a moment to another team that may or may not have some brightness ahead of them. Let's move to the Eagles versus the Giants. We'll start with the Giants here. Giants took an absolute shellacking by the Eagles, 38-7. I think we all saw this one coming. I don't know, Scotty, you put the article together for our lines. Did all the Brainiac daddies have the Eagles taking this one home?
Yeah, we did. And ultimately, I think, it would have been a nice feel-good story for the Giants to be real competitive in this game, but we all kind of knew that this was pretty much inevitable. And especially if you dig in a little bit closer to the Giants' schedule, especially toward the end of the season, you realize that, they beat the Commanders, they beat the Vikings in the first round of the playoffs, but we all know how big of frauds they are. They had a lot of momentum going into the postseason, but if you look a little bit closer, it's like, wow, did they really beat anybody big as the teams were hitting their stride? And the answer is no. And you saw what happens when they play a true playoff team in the Eagles. It just didn't end well for them.
For sure. And we talked about it last week when the Giants won against the Eagles, or the Vikings rather, but the Giants, they're missing a lot of components that they need. And I think that really showed in this game. Offensively, they have no wide receivers. So they've been getting it done with Danny Dimes and Saquon Barkley, who, by the way, are both unrestricted free agents moving into this postseason. But that's kind of where offensively they need wide receiver help. But I think that more than anything else in this, I saw an article and I was reading it. They did nothing. The entire Giants organization did nothing this year to add value. I think they had 2 signings, free agent signings, and that's it. That is the only roster changes from last year to this year. What did change, however, was Brian Dable. And I think that he is a true testament to what a great coach can do for an organization. And I think the outlook, even for the Giants, has got to be pretty fantastic. Another team that I would have been like, you're going to take Danny Dimes and Saquon and you're going to compete for the divisional, the division, would not have ever thought that this was going to be the case entering the season this year. So kudos to Brian Dable. Kudos to this Giants team for being able to go as far as they did with what they had. And I'm kind of interested to see what's going to happen in the future for them, because I think the future is bright for this Giants team as well.
Well, and here's a hot take too, real quick before Alan gives his thoughts. Brian Dable's the reason they lost this game, and the reason for that is because he was the coach at Alabama that benched Jalen Hurts for Tua He was the coordinator there. Yeah, it was a revenge game for Jalen Hurts. Came in and put a shellacking on him just to show him who's boss.
I didn't even realize. Hadn't crossed my mind. Damn, he did it to him. He did it to himself. Really.
I didn't know that. All I was going to say about like the Giants definitely maximized, just like I feel like the Jags did. Like this was like the best they could do, right? Like you're squeezing every ounce out of it, and what you saw was the inability to stretch the defense. We talked about their lack of wide receivers. Nobody was threatening over the top. They weren't threatened by anybody deep. The Eagles have corners and safety that can match up everywhere. They were not worried. They were containing everything, keeping everything in front, and daring them to execute. And they couldn't. The Giants absolutely they could do nothing. It took perfection to do anything against that Eagles team. And I didn't think it was going to be 38-7. Like we all had the Eagles winning. Like I figured it was going to be, a divisional, their division opponents. They've seen each other a lot. They're going to step up. They're going to have some wrinkles. Things are going to happen. But it was just an absolute ass kicking for the Eagles. And I'm sure Eagles fans everywhere were just like, whew, that's a great little first game for the playoffs. And let's get into the championship. So,
yeah, Kenny Golladay, wide receiver, absolute fraud for this organization, as Yeti had pointed out, which is true. He did almost nothing. I think it's time for him to maybe sail off into the sunset for retirement. But they were in cap space hell, and that was problematic for the Giants. So they're kind of under a mini rebuild. What I'm expecting, as I mentioned earlier, Saquon and Danny Dimes are unrestricted free agents. I expect both of them to return. Saquon had even come out and stated that he would like to stay with the Giants if they can make a deal happen. So there's no animosity there, bad blood whatsoever. And I think the Giants, they need both of these players. And I think Danny Dimes is especially somebody who he's not going to break the bank. He is not going to break the bank as far as quarterbacks are concerned. But he's somebody you can build around, and he's somebody that you can get some talent around. And he's shown flashes of greatness, which he hasn't with other regimes before. So I'm excited for him. I think that Danny Dimes could potentially be a long-term solution for this Giants team.
Yeah, they need to get some weapons, though. They need to get somebody on the outside that can stretch that defense. Otherwise, next year as we look at from a fantasy perspective, Saquon's going to be running into like 8-man boxes again, just because nobody's worried. Nobody's worried about it. But a successful season. That whole NFC East, got 3 teams into the divisional. So,
yeah. And then on the flip side, Eagles, of course, I've got them going to the Super Bowl. I don't know if you guys share that same mentality, but this team is probably the best team in the NFL. One of them, very obviously, I think they're going to be one of the best 2 teams in the NFL because I think they're going to make it to the Super Bowl. They are talented in every facet of what they're doing. Their offense has looked absolutely nuclear when it wants to, and their defense is stout as hell. So like they're doing it, and they're doing it really, really well. When you win a game 38-7 in your divisional round, you got a damn good team.
Yeah, that was an ass kicking. Real quick, since you said they're the best, I agree. Eagles are 1. So if we rank the 4 remaining teams, we have Eagles 1. Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Bengals 2.
Yes.
I'd be interested to say San Francisco there. I think Brock Purdy is obviously the question mark. If you have an experienced quarterback at the helm in San Francisco, I think it would, offer a little bit more.
Let's pause this conversation. I don't mean to interrupt you, Scotty. Let's have this conversation at the end of the podcast because I want to cover the rest of these games beforehand. So, but I do love this question. We will answer it, but let's answer this one at the end. So, anything else we need to cover in this game? Very obviously, it was a blowout, and the Eagles looked awesome.
Yeah, Eagles are awesome. That's it.
Okay, fly Eagles, fly. Let's move it. Let's go to the Bengals versus the Bills. A lot to talk about here. Bengals win this one 27-10. Wow. I think I had the Bengals win in this game. I think you guys both had the Bills win in this game. Tough outing for Bills. Bills Mafia is down bad.
I would like to defend myself in that because if you read the preview article, I specifically said I want the Bills to win because I do not want the Chiefs to play the Bengals, and that's why I'm choosing the Bills to win. So I covered myself there. It wasn't objective analysis.
Alan's trying to do with his money line on the Bengals this week, but
no, that's way different because I am not betting on the Chiefs to lose. That's crazy. That's crazy talk.
No, okay. Whatever. Okay. I did not see this coming. everything was shaping up. Buffalo just shit the bed. Let's just say it like it is. They completely shit the bed. Are they 27-10? You play that game 5 times? I don't know. Maybe the beginning of that game in Cincinnati kind of looked like the Bengals were going to score at will every time anyways, before the DeMar Hamlin stuff happened. Like they drove, they're driving again, and then he got hurt and that kind of ended everything. So I don't know if the Bills are just going to get demolished twice by the Bengals. I don't know. I don't know where the Bills go from here. That game was, I don't know what they do. I don't know where. I think that's where their fan base is thinking too. Like, this was a great team. We started the season Super Bowl favorites. We were Super Bowl favorites all through the season. We get to the playoffs. We almost lose to Skyler. And then, this happens. So
that was a really big red flag for me, is that Dolphins game. That was a huge red flag because you're playing against a third string quarterback. And yes, while there's other talented assets on that field, the quarterback is he's the director of the play, right? And if he's able to get things done, that's somewhat worrisome for me. And that's what happens. So you asked the question, where do they go from here? That's a damn good question. And I don't think there's a concrete answer as far as we need to fix this, right? Because there is so much talent all around the board. Very obviously, you're not going to move on from Josh Allen because he is a great quarterback. Wide receiver wise, you're set and run. What do you do, right? Because there's no finger to point at any specific situation and say, this was the reason we lost this game. They got outplayed. That's what happened. They got outplayed.
I mean, there are a couple things you can point to. Number one, Josh played bad. I mean, he played, especially when you compare it to his best, where we've seen him at in his career, he played bad. And the other finger pointer that I would make is we know how bad the Bengals offensive line is, and they have like one player, I think, who started the season that was starting this game on the offensive line. So they're injury ridden. They've been bad for 2 straight seasons. They sacked Joe Burrow 1 time. So they made no attempt to get any pressure on this offense and to force Joe Burrow into bad situations. They let Mixon run all over them. He had over 100 yards rushing. The line at Buffalo really let them down defensively. I think they could have made a lot of waves if they had played well.
Sure, but they still,
the play calling in this game. The play calling in this game was also amazing from the Bengals. They were running things. They were keeping. Yeah, they got out coached. If you want to circle something, that Bills coaching staff. I know we talked about this in episodes past about losing Dable. Like, how integral was Dable to everything they were doing?
Sure.
And you look at what happened. They looked kind of lost. They looked clueless. Josh Allen looked unsure of himself. And you rewind even to last year in that divisional game against the Chiefs, when they were just, we know what we're doing. We know the plays we're running. We're executing, and we're going. And not much changed from that team. And if you look at 13 seconds away from going to the AFC Championship and losing, and then they get into this game, and then they just get run over. Like, if I'm a Bills fan, I'm a little nervous just because I feel like we're trending now. Now we're trending in the wrong direction. And you look at, what players look like and what motivates them. And if I'm a player, even on that team, like, we don't look any closer than we did 2 years ago. We look kind of further away. And now what do we do?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you bring this up. Stephon Diggs, he cleared out his locker and left before some of the coaches had even got back into the locker room. Running back Duke Johnson had ran out, convinced him to come back in. So Stephon Diggs runs back into the locker room. He stays there very briefly, and then he exits again.
Mm-hmm.
He's very frustrated, very obviously, and I think that's a show of it. So what are your guys' takes?
Well, the crybaby meter in Buffalo is off the charts right now between Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. Those guys, I mean, they wear their emotions on their sleeve. Obviously, they're hard workers who want to win. They're tough competitors. But, man, when the second something doesn't go their way, they are perfectly willing to throw a temper tantrum on live TV. As you saw Stephon Diggs, even before they went into the locker room, screaming at Josh Allen, throwing his hands in the air on the sideline in front of their home crowd. It's just not a good look. Like, they're very obviously frustrated. They feel the organization is kind of standing on shaky ground. And we say that even though they're a great team and they have great talent. But it's obvious that these guys don't know how to stay measured and composed. And I know it sounds kind of like I'm being nitpicky, but when you see a reaction like that from Josh Allen, where he's throwing balls at people or screaming at people or pushing people over on the field, or you see Stephon Diggs throwing a temper tantrum on the sideline, okay, how are you going to react when you're in game and something doesn't go your way? Like, we need you to have a level head. We need you to play this game like a professional, and they very clearly aren't willing to do that, at least some of the time.
I'm okay with a little bit of emotion. Like, especially in a game like this. Like, if you're talking regular season and the game maybe doesn't necessarily matter, yeah, okay, there's some conversation to be had. But in a game like this, I'm okay with a little bit of emotion. I'm okay with Stephon Diggs getting upset and wanting to leave because I think about it from my own perspective and how I would react, right? Like, you very obviously are a leader on this team. You want to succeed. You are working day in and day out to succeed, and you want the absolute best. So I'm okay with a little bit of emotion. Now, this game is an emotional game, period. Like, yes, at times, maybe there's too much emotion involved, but at the end of the day, this is an emotional game just as much as it is anything else. And for that reason, I'm okay with it.
The only thing I'll say, yeah, I agree with you. I think you're absolutely right. Like, I understand the emotion. Diggs was also yelling on the sidelines. We're not sure if it was at Josh or at the offensive coordinator. I would like to think it's at the offensive coordinator for what they were drawing up. It was kind of odd how they started the game. It was just very, very un-Bills-like start to the game all the way around. But there is precedent because Diggs was acting this way towards the end of his Vikings stay, where he got very publicly frustrated, was not happy, wanted to go. Not saying he's going to leave the Bills, because I think where else is he going to go to maximize? Right. Where else is he going to go? But I think he set a precedent where he gets unhappy. And if this goes into the offseason and he's very unhappy, or they don't change up the coaching staff, you could see them being kind of stuck, and it could torpedo the team even further. I hope they sort it out. It's again, going back to my previous statements on the last game with the Jags, whatever, it's in a vacuum. Like, yes, you got your ass kicked in one game. It was to the Bengals. They're playing really well. They just outcoached you and outplayed you. Sometimes that shit happens. You know, you were still one of the top teams in the AFC. Like, you're not that far away, but it feels like you're far away, right? Like that feeling, you're like, oh, damn it, we just want to win one. We're so far.
I think it would ultimately have to. I want to see some changes in the coaching staff. I want to see the coaches, because like we just stated, I think they got outcoached, and I think that's a really large part of it. Very obviously, like you said, where else would Stephon Diggs go where they are going to have a chance to compete? He's in a very good spot situationally for him to try and chase a ring. And that's what he wants to do. I'm fine with it. Yeti mentioned in our text that Josh Allen maybe is the Phillip Rivers to the Manning era, where Mahomes
always pretty good,
and
never quite
always
good
pretty
enough.
Good, but never quite good enough. Let's see what happens here. I think that, we talked about Dable being with the Bills. Josh Allen, he's led the league in turnovers this year. Like, that is 100% the case. And it was actually kind of funny. My mother, who is a Chiefs fan, I said, you want to play the Bills. You don't want to play the Bengals next week. You want to play the Bills. I said, Josh Allen's turn. And she was asking me, okay, Bills, Bengals, who's going to win this game? I said, the Bengals are going to win this game. I said, Josh Allen's leading the league in turnovers, baby. And that's probably part of it. Does Dable play a part in that? Maybe.
Seems like he does.
I would say
it's hard to say not. It's hard to say
exactly. He's got two teams now where he completely changed that record, and then when he left one, the record came right back. Like, it seems like it's not just unlucky.
Yeah, I think some coaching has to be, or has something to do with that probably. So, Bengals, Chiefs, baby. We've covered both these games now. I'm taking the Bengals. The Bengals. Matt's gonna ride on his blind optimism. So put your darkest sunglasses on, because you're gonna be in for a hell of a ride. Truth be told, I don't really necessarily care about either of these teams. So I'm looking at this with no bias whatsoever. The Bengals, I think, are going to win this game. I think that is realistically what is going to happen. The Bengals, much like we discussed with the Eagles, the Bengals look like the most complete team. They do. And go ahead, Alan.
I was just going to say, they have the most weapons of a lot of these teams left. And we were talking about ranking, which we'll do here at the end of the show. But like, they have 3 legit, like, number 1-ish receivers that they can go out there. I have a good tight end. Their offensive line, I don't know what to make of it, because everybody says it sucks. And that was the same thing we heard last year. Their offensive line sucks. But yeah, they still made it to the Super Bowl, and they were really close to winning. So I don't know. I think they just float that out there so everybody like has a false sense of security about playing the Bengals, because I'm just guessing they were actually just all really good at this point. I don't know what else to say.
If they were really good, they wouldn't give up like 5 sacks a game throughout all of last year and most of this year, except for the Bills. They couldn't figure it out, I guess. But
Yeah, and the Bills pass rush, non-existent. I know Von Miller wasn't playing, but even in that game, it was just very odd how they could generate no rush. And they stayed back in a zone. So you didn't rush, but then you just let these 3 number 1 wide receivers just zigzag all over the field and do whatever they wanted. Like, very odd. And they can run the ball. And they have 2 running backs that can absolutely pound the ball. So on offense, they're stacked. Defense, they are definitely stacked. I think that D-line is amazing. I'm not surprised they beat the Bills. I'm surprised they beat the Bills handily. And as a Chiefs fan, I'm like, whoa. Like, can we do better than 27-10? Please, God, let us just do better than 27-10.
I think that's an admirable goal to shoot for. But I think that if you don't, the narrative can be spun in your favor. Patrick Mahomes was hurt. I think regardless, and I'm just going to say this, I think that even if Patrick Mahomes was healthy, I think you still lose this game. But I think him getting hurt was the nail in the coffin for me to just say, the Bengals. This game's not even going to be nearly as interesting as I thought it could be.
Right. Well, and the way you beat the Bengals is by pressuring Joe Burrow. Obviously, they're susceptible to that. We've seen that over the course of time. And even in the preview article that I wrote, I said the way the Bills win this game is by pressuring Joe Burrow, get him on the turf before he can get the ball to his weapons. The Chiefs have to do the same thing. Their secondary is not very good. These 2 receivers and T. Higgins and Jamar Chase are going to eat them up if they give Joe Burrow all day to throw the ball. So they have to pressure the quarterback. The defense is just as important in this game as Patrick Mahomes is.
Yeah, the defense has to win this game. Mahomes, not that Mahomes can't. I think the defense has to win this game. It has to be a decided defensive game if the Chiefs have a shot, which is
not a good position to be in as Chiefs fans.
No, not at all.
Negative.
Last thing we'll touch on this game, Mike Florio, he tweeted and said that the Bengals have the 27th overall pick in the upcoming draft. And then he said, if Bijan is there, with a little shrug emoji. I just wanted to touch on this for fantasy purposes. I don't think there's any way in hell that the Bills would draft Bijan Robinson. I don't think that is.
Will he be there at 27? Do you think he'll be there at 27?
I don't know, because I've kind of been the problem is right now nobody has traded up yet, and so we really don't know exactly what the exact picks are going to look like. But if the picks stay the way that they are now, and we know that they're not going to, but if they did, I still don't. Even if he did fall 27th to the Bills, I don't think the Bills would take him. Like, I think James Cook is their future, and I think they know that. And I think that they were probably looking for youth on other places. And I'm not saying James Cook is better than Bijan Robinson, but what I'm saying is James Cook is usable, and we've seen that. And I personally believe, as I have stated quite a few times on this podcast, I think James Cook is their future running back there.
If you're Bills GM, you're there on draft night, what position do you draft first round? What do you think they should go for? Not what they will do. What do you think they should go for? Not knowing how it shakes out. You just get the option.
That's tough, because I like looking at positional needs where they could use some help. I think if they could find a good pass rusher, that would be definitely big. Like Scotty said, that's one of the focal points that they really didn't crush in this game. Defensive, I think that offensively, you're fine. Gabe Davis is young. He's 23. Stephon Diggs is an aging asset, but goddamn is he one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. So both those guys are solid. You signed Cole Beasley, so maybe look for a youthful wide receiver if you can find one, if they're still there. They don't need a running back. Very obviously, they don't need a quarterback. Like, I think you maybe look towards your defense, and depending upon who's there, maybe a D lineman, maybe an outside backer. I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. I haven't done enough homework on it to concretely say.
Yeah.
A lot of the D linemen, I think, are going to be gone early. I think a lot of the edge rushers and down guys on the defensive front are going to be the first ones off the board this year. There are a lot of good options and a lot of teams in need. So I don't think they would go that route just because of the quality that's going to be left on the board in the first round. So I agree. I think maybe picking up another young wide receiver who's talented they can use in that slot position. The big if you're looking at the Buffalo's offense, obviously outside of Josh Allen's affinity for turning the ball over, one of the biggest problems that they have is that they seem to rely so heavily on the deep ball, right? They almost don't have any intermediate passing game, and that's why they brought Cole Beasley on. He actually, even though he wasn't used all that much, he does provide a little bit of a safety valve there where they have a reliable pass catcher that can run 8-yard routes and 10-yard routes and be a possession wide receiver.
But
I think if they can find some
Davis is like, shouldn't that, like, from a positional standpoint in his build, like, shouldn't he not play more of a slot role than what he's doing?
I don't know. I think he's proven that he is an effective possession guy on the outside, and he's had big games because of that. I think Stefon Diggs actually fits more of the mold of that kind of position, high speed player that they can put in and make catches. But Stefon Diggs has also kind of been that deep guy, and maybe it's just the offensive scheme where they could use either of those.
Coaching, and I think that's probably.
I think it's coaching. I think Dorsey. I think Ken Dorsey though. I think he falls in love with Josh Allen's arm, which. I mean, he can chuck it. It's very accurate, but you could see how weird was that the game is in Buffalo and the Bills did not look prepared to play in the snow. I think if you draft anything, if you get a thing, you draft a lineman and you run that fucking ball.
I think that's part of it. I think you need to establish the run game. I think that's very important. Danny Dimes only threw 5 picks this year with Brian Daboll. And I don't know where that ranks on the chart for turnovers, but it's got to be towards the bottom for the quarterbacks. And so for that reason, like I truth be told, I think a lot of this has to do with coaching. And I think we need to see some new faces in that staff room in order for the Bills to find the success that they're looking for. Because I think the talent is there. There's a lot of people going into the free agent market here, though, that I do just want to touch on. Jordan Poyer, Tremaine Edmonds, Devin Singletary, I don't believe is going to be back. They're losing 2 D linemen. So unless they re-sign some of these guys, like they're going to be gone and they're going to have some holes defensively that they need to fill. They're losing 2 O linemen, which is worth of note. So it's going to be interesting. I think with a first round pick, you're probably going to see a defensive player off the board. And that's just my thought.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's also an interesting point, though, because if they hypothetically were to get Bijan and he was better able to help them establish that running game, which is what they desperately need to do. It's the same thing that we talk about with the Chiefs. They look so much better when they're balanced, and you open up your outside weapons so much more when you're balanced. And even though James Cook is a great player, I think he's great on the outside. He's great as a pass catching back. If they can get someone who is effective running between the tackles, that may be a key for them.
And I don't necessarily disagree, but I think they're not going to want to spend the draft capital on that when they already have a young guy that they have they didn't spot start James Cook this year, right? It was Devin Singletary, and then towards the end of the season, we started to see Cook get more acclimated in this offense, and I think they wanted to slow roll him into it. I just think with all the other needs that this team is going to face in the offseason, depending upon what decisions they make as far as re-signings go, they're going to have some holes to fill. And I think running back is maybe not their biggest concern in that era. So we'll see. And right, like it's a little soon to tell. Let's talk about the 49ers versus the Cowboys. And I'm very, very excited to talk about this game. We'll start it off. Tony Pollard left the game with a fractured fibula that will require surgery. Okay. Right. So he's an unrestricted free agent this upcoming year for fantasy purposes. He looked way better than Zeke. All year long. Yep. Tony Pollard was the RB1 for this team, and old man Jerry would not let Tony run with the offense. Wink, wink. So, do they re-sign him next year? Obviously, this is a huge, devastating blow for Tony. This is not what you want as an unrestricted free agent in your last game, to have a broken limb that you need to fix. So his price tag may not be as great as it once was, and that's kind of problematic. So there's I would say if this didn't happen, there's a good chance he doesn't wear a Cowboys uniform next year. But depending upon what the price is now for him, is there a chance he comes back, you guys think?
If they can, for the right price, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I do think that this injury is a big deal. I think this is going to impact his prospects by quite a bit. Sure. And I also agree with you. I think it increases the likelihood that he comes back as a Cowboy, just because. And I don't know the history of this particular injury. I don't know, do running backs in particular who take these big hits all the time is this something that they're concerned about for their career? Is this something they come back and they're basically 100%? I have no idea. So it's going to depend also on the recovery time frame and all that stuff, and whether
we're going
to
need you to break
100%.
Your fibula, Scotty.
Yeah,
with all the other things you've done for this team, this Leather Brains team this year, as far as injuries are concerned. If you could break your fibula, let us know what you're feeling like 3 or 4 months out. That would be a huge service to us in our analytics.
I will say if the Chiefs beat the Bengals by the same score that the Bengals beat the Bills, I'll let you break my fibula however you want.
Oh my God. Well, I just did a quick.
Does that cost more than $30,000? I don't know.
Well, It says you need some degree of protection for 10 to 12 weeks and then another month to fully rehabilitate. So that's
not too bad.
About 4 months, 3 or 4 months. Okay. That's Tony Pollard news. Brett Maher missed another extra point to start this game. I don't think
it was blocked, but it looked like it was going to miss.
It was going to miss. It was going to miss.
Well,
do not say that.
Okay, Nostradamus. What else is going to happen?
It did look like it was going to be his worst. It looked like it was going to be his worst miss yet. It was blocked.
It might have hit some guy in like the concessions, like way off to the left.
The popcorn guy walking down the fucking aisle. Yeah. It was bad. Brett Maher is probably not going to kick another anything. Although he kicked a field goal. I don't have the yardage, but he did kick a field goal.
Yeah, a couple
long field goals.
Maybe it's just how close. Like he just gets nervous up close.
Yeah, he might have astigmatism or something.
He's a long schlong.
He just gets blurry the closer he is.
Yeah, he can shoot threes. He just can't hit any layups.
He's cross-eyed.
He's the Kyle Korver of football.
Yeah. There we go.
Oh, shit. After this game, like I said, the Cowboys lost this game 12-19. Jerry Jones was asked after the game if Mike McCarthy's future was in jeopardy, in which he responded, no, not at all. I think that's fair. I don't know if you guys agree with that.
Sean Payton calls and says, I want to coach the Cowboys. I think they get rid of his ass.
I don't think they.
The Cowboys can't afford it.
Yeah, I was gonna say
that's probably
they can't even afford it. Even if they wanted to, they don't have the money. That's like they're just like
they don't have the money. They don't have the capital. Like Sean Payton, they want. I believe it's like a first and then some other shit.
Well, let me tell you this though, because the Cowboys now have had 12 straight playoff appearances where they didn't make it to the conference championship. 12 straight.
Yeah,
they're in trouble.
It's hard to win in the NFL.
It is hard to win. I'm surprised they made it this far. And I tweeted on my own personal account last night before the game, and I said, hey, look, I hope the Cowboys lose because no matter what, they're going to lose next week to the Eagles. So let's get the pain over with now. Cowboys fans are fucking obnoxious, and I don't want to have to listen to them all whine and cry when the Eagles beat them. So let's get the beat a week early. Let's just let the pain settle in right now so we can move on. And that's what happened. And I was
excited to see him lose. Yeah, I agree with
I was too. I'm not. There are teams that I am very neutral with. Chiefs being one of them. There are teams that I will root for, and there are teams that I will never root for, and the Cowboys are one of them. I will never root for the Cowboys.
There was one member of the Leather Brains that picked him to win, which will remain nameless. We won't dig into who exactly that was. But I thought this person that picked the Cowboys to win, was on to something. I thought there was going to be, it was me. I thought we were going to see more. I thought we were going to see Brock Purdy I thought we were going to see Brock Purdy make a few more mistakes. He made the throws he needed to make. It wasn't, he didn't lose them the game. That's what happened here. But he didn't
win in the game.
No, he just let Dak play with his dick for a little bit all over the field and just make some mistakes. That's all he did. He just got out of the way and let the Cowboys make the mistakes he needed to win.
To be fair, he probably should have thrown a couple picks that just weren't actually caught by the defense, and that could have turned the tide on the whole game. But again, the whole thing here is like it's been all season. As long as Dak Prescott's in the game, how many picks does he throw? And he tried to throw like 5 picks. They only caught 2 of them, but there should have been 5 interceptions from Dak Prescott in this game because I don't know what the hell he's seeing. He's just throwing the ball right into the breadbasket of the defense like every other play. I just don't understand. And he has not had 2 consecutive games this season without a turnover all season.
If I was Jerry Jones, a lot of things would be different. But if I was Jerry Jones, I would walk into the line. Would be really cool. Except I'd be really close to death, and that wouldn't be as cool.
True, but you'd be really rich.
That's there's pros and cons. I would walk into the locker room, and I would look at Mike McCarthy, and I would say, "Hold out your hand." And he would hold his hand out, and I would walk over and I would smack it real quick, and I'd say, "What the fuck was that play at the very end of the game where you put Zeke at center?" Are you fucking kidding me? And if you watch that, Zeke got fucking destroyed.
Yeah, that was absolutely
hilarious.
Epic. Well, and what's funny is that like when I first saw Zeke lining up at center, I'm like, okay, they want some dynamic players out there so they can lateral it around and have a chance to make something happen. But then you look over to the sideline and they still have all of their offensive linemen on the field. And it's like, okay, if you're going to put Zeke at center and have him try and block, at least like
So
give
funny.
everyone like put all your receivers and shit out there. But
Yeah.
they put all their offensive linemen away from the pass rush and then told Zeke good luck.
Yeah, it was like the OC just yelled "Guardiloo," and it was just like, "Everybody, watch out! We're going." Like what? It's like, did you ever see that movie, The Little Giants? It's an older one.
Yeah.
But there's
yeah.
a scene in that where they're
yeah.
like spying on the team, and he's like, "The quarterback's not even there. The center's in the backfield. The tackle's over here." And then he's like, "They're just standing around." That literally looked like he was just like, "All right, you guys, let's just try something really funny." And like, whatever, fuck it. It's the end of the game.
He got his whiteboard out.
Even if you go back and look at that play, it should have been flagged. Like there wasn't even proper alignment. They didn't have the right linemen. Nobody was aligned correctly. But it's like the refs are like, let's just see how this plays out because they're not winning anyways.
Well, what's really funny too is that
We'll throw a flag if this goes for something.
The 49ers called a timeout, and they obviously called the timeout because they're like, well, what the fuck do we do about all this? But it was almost like, hey, Mike McCarthy, man, we're going to give you a second chance to think about this. Like, do you really want to do this? And he's like, yeah, fucking stick with it. Let's do it. And then it got blown up by Zeke got blown up. The receiver got immediately blown up, and it was just humiliating. I think if Mike McCarthy loses his job, Jerry Jones just can't forget this play. He's going to be like, I just can't.
Kyle Shanahan at that timeout looked at that D lineman and goes, I want you to fucking rock him. So, yes, coach.
I want you to break his fibula too.
He goes, I don't care if you get Dak, but destroy Zeke. And he's like, all right, I can do that.
Give you a 5-yard head start.
What a play to just mail it in. Jesus.
Like, it was
not even
ending
like
their
kind of
season.
an attempt.
Electric. I laughed.
Well,
so
and
hard
also
when that
one more thing we have to touch on a slightly more serious note is the Dalton Schultz missed catch because he didn't step on the field for some reason when he was like 4 yards in bounds. That would have given them an extra 15 yards to maybe go for a normal Hail Mary. That ended up being a big play, and he got their only touchdown of the game.
Yeah.
But it's like, dude, if you make that catch, that changes that last play by a lot.
No, they were still going to run that play. That was their last play. They
I don't care. We're on the 1 yard line. This is what we're
dialed up. Zeke is going to snap it. I don't care. We're going to see it.
Well, I was like, Jerry had to have had it because he's got a boner for Zeke, and he's like, I want Zeke to snap that ball.
Yeah, well, Zeke's getting fat enough. He's damn near.
I know. You look at his face, and he, like, if you just show his mugshot versus one of the linemen's mugshots, you can't tell the
That'd be
difference.
bunny where you shove marshmallows in your mouth.
He needs to shave his face and cut his hair. That's the only way he's going to get quicker at this point.
Maybe
That's true. And he's not
get a
getting
helmet
younger.
with a real face mask.
Aerodynamics are real. Okay. 49ers side of things. 49ers coach Kyle Shanahan said that Jimmy Garoppolo has an outside chance to be ready for the NFC Championship game if San Francisco were able to advance to it. But there'd be a better chance for him to be ready for the Super Bowl if the 49ers get there. So, given that news, let's talk about Brock Purdy for a minute. Let's talk about, is it because I don't think I'd play Jimmy if the 49ers made it to the Super Bowl. I don't think they're going to. I think the Eagles are going to beat them, but I think this could be a fun game. But I think the Eagles will do it. I'm stating that right now. But if the 49ers go to the Super Bowl, if you were the head coach of the 49ers, you were Kyle Shanahan, would you play Jimmy G over Purdy?
No.
Not a chance.
Okay.
If anything, you would be giving up valuable experience for the guy that may be your future quarterback. And he's obviously been doing great. So there's not a whole lot of reason for concern at this point, especially with the way the offense is structured. You're not asking him to play hero ball. You're just asking him to make good pre-snap reads, make an accurate 5-yard throw, and you're golden. Let your defense handle it. But at the very least, you want him to get this late playoff experience because this is going to be so beneficial down the line in his career, especially if you're planning on potentially sticking with him long term.
I agree with that. I think if I had to choose, I don't think Jimmy G sees a field again, regardless. And I let's talk about this game in Purdy. I don't think Purdy was great. I don't think Purdy was anything to write home about. But I will say he made some plays. He had some duds. I think, and you got to understand this too, the Cowboys defense is no fucking joke. Like they played a hell of a defensive game, and I was incredibly impressed with how they played this game.
Mm-hmm.
Point blank, like the 49ers offense is stout. It is hard to cover. And we saw it all game. We saw Juszczyk line up as an outside receiver. We saw Debo line up as running back. Christian McCaffrey's out wide. Oh, next play, Christian McCaffrey's in the backfield. Elijah Mitchell, they're running an I formation. Like, we saw so many variations in schematic differences in this team that it made it would make it very hard to cover as a defense. We kind of touched on this last week, but I was just really impressed with the fact that the Cowboys were able to cover the scheme and be able to, whatever the 49ers threw at them schematically, the Cowboys defense looked like they had an answer for it for the most part. And I don't think Brock Purdy didn't do great in my opinion.
I don't think he did great. I don't think he did bad. I think the Cowboys have a championship level defense with whatever they're doing on offense,
better defense than the Eagles on paper anyway.
Yeah, well, and if you look at the numbers that Purdy put up, it was still over 200 yards. It was 19 to 29. All like his main targets from the wide receiver side all had over 10 yards, or averaging 10 yards of reception plus. I think he did what he needed to do on some of those. He made some great throws where you're like, okay, like that's amazing.
The George Kittle throw was not a great throw. That was a great play by George Kittle.
Yes.
He put it right where it needed to be to make the play. But no, I agree with the sentiment. I actually said that in the article we published today is even though they didn't get in the end zone a lot, they only got in the end zone one time. They still put up 330 yards of total offense. Between the two backs, they still had almost 100 yards rushing. Christian McCaffrey had another 22 yards receiving. Like, they played exactly how they needed to play as a team with the number one defense in the league. Don't take stupid risks. Just play it smart. We'll get in scoring position. If we have to take a field goal, we'll take a field goal. We're going to count on our defense to make the stop. And that's all they have to do against anybody in the league. And there are better offenses than Dallas, but you're playing the Eagles. It's the same game plan. Play it smart, get the ball in the hands of your playmakers, and play stout defense. They can beat anybody in the league.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me ask you this, Scotty. You have the Eagles at 49ers this upcoming week.
That is still up in the air. I haven't written that article yet. I haven't decided. I think the way I look at it is that I look at both teams very similarly. They're very complete teams, both solid defenses, both a lot of weapons on offense. And I think Brock Purdy is the X factor there. And so given that, I think I would lean toward the Eagles.
I have the Eagles. Alan, who do you got?
Eagles.
Okay, you got the Eagles as well.
I'm very solid. This is going to be an Eagles-Bengals Super Bowl.
I agree. I thought that a couple weeks ago, and I put some money on that.
They look the best.
Hopefully that works.
Playing the best.
They are. Both teams are playing well, and before we even begin to speculate on that, we got to make it to that point. But we don't. Jimmy G's back for the Super Bowl. If that happens, we don't think there's a chance that he starts.
There's no reason to. Don't fix what ain't broken.
I agree. Yeah, and Jimmy G, where has Jimmy G been? Like, I think that's part of the conversation. He's not on the sideline for these games. He's not cheering his team on and trying to help out. Where's he at?
Where would you be if you're super attractive and have a shit ton of money?
Thailand with my super hot girlfriend after I got fired.
Right? What kind of question is that? I wouldn't be on the sidelines. Like, I'm not going to play here next year. Fuck it. I'm going to be out. Let's see how many women I can get involved with before I get out of here, out of the Bay Area.
Man, if I had the looks of him, I don't blame him. I wouldn't blame him for it. I don't blame him for it. But in the same respect, you're still part of this team. Your team's going to the Super Bowl. On paper, on paper, he is still there. Why? You're gonna get a ring if they go and they win. Like, the ring's coming to you. So you think if they make it to the Super Bowl, he's not going to be on the sideline for that?
Well,
like, here's
the real question.
Kyle Shanahan just get the fuck out.
Here's the real question with him not being on the sideline now, and say he doesn't show up for the rest of the playoffs, they win the Super Bowl. You think he would ever wear that ring, or do you think he would display it, or you think he would just sell it or throw it in a box somewhere?
It's just in his underwear drawer.
Oh, I'd wear it. I'd wear it proudly. I'd show it off everywhere I went.
I did almost nothing for this ring.
I won some games this season, and we won the Super Bowl.
Like whatever. 3 games. Check this out.
After getting benched.
Yeah. He gets the bonus. They get the playoff bonuses.
That's true.
I think just take the money and walk and be pretty. That's all he's got to do.
It's not hard, man. He's a good-looking dude. Okay. I don't have anything else I want to cover in this specific game. Do any of you gentlemen before we get to the end here?
No, we're good. I think we covered it.
Okay. So let's rank them. Now that we made it to the end. 49ers, Eagles, Chiefs, Bengals. Who's your number one? We'll start with you, Alan. Who's your number one?
Eagles.
Okay,
very clearly number one.
Eagles number one. Okay, Scotty, you're number one.
I think I would also say the Eagles.
Okay. I would also say the Eagles. That's my number one. But there's an asterisk. Yeah, I'm going to take the Eagles. I think they're the most complete. I'll take Eagles as well. So round one complete. Round two, Scotty.
This is where we're going to differ because I think I would put San Francisco above the Bengals. And the primary reason for that is if you think in a head-to-head matchup, I like this defense against this bad offensive line. I really do. And I think they would eat it up. I think this wouldn't look like the same Bengals offense with the 49ers defense trying to stop them.
Okay.
I think I disagree just on a numbers principle why I put the Bengals ahead. The 49ers struggle with people that can actually pass the ball well. And that's how they've been their thing they can stop the run. Like they won't be able to run, which is what, 99% of the teams want to do. I think if the Bengals were to pass, I just think not going head to head because we could go talk ourselves into circles. I just have the Bengals right now as we sit here as the second best team.
Well, let me just push back a little bit, not going head to head. But I think when you look at this, yeah, kind of. When you look at the stat sheet throughout the season, I've been one that's been harping on it all year long. You can pass on the 49ers, but part of the reason for that from a fantasy perspective is because the 49ers are so damn good, you have to pass on the 49ers. So they're seeing an outsized number of pass attempts, which is why you're seeing the statistics skewed in this way. And from a fantasy perspective, it doesn't matter. But from a football perspective, I think
fantasy matters.
Well, I'm saying from a fantasy perspective, it is not relevant because you're happy to take the points no matter how the points come. But from a football perspective, you have to look at it as why are these teams passing? And it's because they're losing. And even though the 49ers give up a lot of pass yards, they're also great in the red zone. They don't allow teams to score that often. I really do think that the Bengals would struggle. And I think it'd be a great game. But I think the Bengals would lose that game.
Well, we won't know. I have the Bengals at number 2.
Okay, so
I also have the Bengals at number 2, so we're still stuck like glue, baby. Number 3, Alan. Actually, I'll go number 3.
Yeah, save me for last.
49ers. I think the 49ers are the third best team, and I for a lot of the reasons that we've already discussed. Defensively, they're stout. I think the reason I have the 49ers in third instead of second is Brock Purdy has not been the it guy for me yet. He's not exceptional, but he's also not terrible. He's been plug and played into a systematic offense, and he's done very well in it. And that's exciting. I'm happy for him. I think he is doing a good job, but he hasn't done anything that I'm like, oh shit. Like in a lot of other quarterbacks have. I've had one of those oh shit moments where I'm like, oh man, like they add that extra quote it factor. Haven't seen it from Purdy yet. I'm not saying that he doesn't have it, but systematically he's doing very well. I just think Joe Burrow's a little bit better. I got him at number 3, or this team at number 3, in large part because of Brock Purdy. Scotty, who do you have as your number 3 team?
Bengals. And I agree with what you said, but ultimately I think San Francisco is kind of the exception to the rule, where normally when you're looking at two offenses head to head, it's natural to start comparing quarterbacks. They're the leader of the team. San Francisco, I don't think you have to do that. And it's because it is a systematic offense.
We've said that.
Yeah. The person behind center in that offense matters a whole lot less than the person behind center in every other offense. So that's why I think Brock Purdy is the question mark on that team. He's the one kind of soft spot on both offense and defense. But it also, they have the soft spot in the position that matters probably the least because they have weapons everywhere else. As long as he's competent enough to make a pre-snap
still the
read,
director though.
He's going to be.
He's still the director.
He is, and I, you can say what you want about his play, but his reads have been great.
They have,
and it's probably because it doesn't matter. You can take your first read or your second read or your third read. They're all fucking open because they're all amazing athletes. So it's probably also in part due to the people around him, but he's been making great pre-snap reads, and sometimes he misses throws and he's a little bit antsy in the pocket because he's a rookie, but I think he does the job that needs to be done well enough to be the number 2 team.
I think you could compare Kyle Shanahan and Brian Dable in some aspects as far as letting their quarterbacks making it easy for their quarterbacks in a lot of different ways. And I think it's very true in this situation, because look at the 49ers team when they had Jimmy G. Jimmy G's not a good quarterback. Like he is not a good quarterback, but what he is good at is being put into a systematic offense in which he can do his checkdowns. I think Purdy's better than Jimmy G. And I think that he deserves a spot in this offense, or at least an argument between him and Trey Lance in this offseason. And I'm sure that's what we're going to see. Purdy and Lance, but Jimmy G is not great. And Kyle Shanahan, I think, is good at making it easy for his quarterbacks to not make mistakes, which is very, very important. So, Alan, you're number 3.
The 49ers.
49ers. Okay. We need to alleviate on or extend on that at all.
We already I have an exercise for us to run at the very, very end here.
See, I was just gonna leave the podcast before we got to number 4 because I didn't want to admit it.
I got something for us at the very end. It's the Chiefs. Okay. The Chiefs are.
We all have the Chiefs at number 4.
It's mainly because of their defense. If you look at the top 3, we trust their defenses way more than we trust the Chiefs defense, right? Yeah. Like across the board. Okay, 100%. Really quick. One quick exercise. It's not a slide against, whatever. They're the 4th best team of the 4. Okay. So I pulled up the team defense in sack totals for the year. Okay. Of those 4 remaining teams, I want you to just, without looking anything up, who do you think would be 1, 2, 3, and 4 in sack totals on a list of NFL teams 1 through 32? Who would show up first,
most
second, third, or fourth?
Or gives out the most?
Gives out the most. A defense that pressures and gets the most. Who's number 1 out of the 4? Eagles.
Chiefs,
Bengals,
I think
Niners.
Because you're asking this question, it makes me feel like it's a trick. So I'm going to go with the Chiefs.
They are not number 1.
Damn.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I was trying to read the question asker.
It's okay. Yeah. It's okay. But there's something in here. Okay.
I'm going to take the Eagles.
Eagles are number 1. 70 sacks this year. Led the NFL.
Wow.
Who shows up second on the list? Well, it's actually the number 2 team overall in the NFL, which are the Chiefs at 55 sacks. So quite the difference, but they are number 2. If we scroll down, 49ers are 11th in the NFL in sacks. The Bengals are all the way down at 29th in sacks this year, which is very interesting when I was looking at that overall.
But that's just sacks. That's one dimension to the. Yes, sacks are important because it shows that you're pressuring the quarterback. But there's also other avenues in which you could look at turnovers. You could look at just pressures itself. So there is other stats. It is interesting. But I do just want to state for all of our listeners out there that is not the end all be all de facto statistic for if a defense is good or not.
Right. And if you look at interceptions, it goes Niners, and then Niners are number 1. And getting interceptions.
I wouldn't have guessed that.
Yeah, well, and to dig into that stat a little bit more, like putting the Chiefs at number 2. Obviously, we have some good front 4. Like we have a couple good players that are mean and they can get stuff done. But again, the Chiefs are a high-powered offense with the best quarterback in football, so they're going to be playing teams who pass more than average. So it's makes sense that they have more opportunities to pressure the quarterback in that way.
Okay, that was a fun game. That was a bunch of fun games. I love playing games. And I also love drinking whiskey, and I am just about out. So that means we have to finish the show. Are you drinking water over there?
No, it's vodka. I ran out of whiskey.
Gross.
What are we, in college?
Yeah.
It's
free old vodka.
Here, check this out. It's handmade. It says.
I like Tito's. Tito's is good.
Tito's is fine, but I wouldn't drink it straight. I'm not a fucking animal.
Yeah.
We've given.
You don't have lemonade over there? You could throw in it.
No, I put some. I put some clear American water in it. No free ads.
Fucking terrible. I love clear American.
It's delicious. Blackberry.
Oh my
warm
God.
Black cherry.
No. It's cold with ice. I mean, the ice is melted now, but it was cold.
I love it.
Still gross.
I love it.
Right, it was a good decision.
That's it. We're getting very far out of conversation here. That's it, everybody. If this is your first time in here at Leather Brains, welcome aboard. You are officially a Brainiac. We do greatly appreciate all of your continued support. If you want to give us an ad, we would be more than happy to accept your money because Scotty needs better internet. And that's all. That's it. That is all that we have. My last recommendation to all of you before we get going is go over on our Twitter profile, click the link on our Twitter profile, and go subscribe to our Substack where Scotty has been ever so busy writing things for you guys. Free of charge, completely free. It will get emailed directly to your email
My hands have been bleeding, so I need some positive feedback for positive reinforcement.
Yeah, go support Scotty and go support us and what we're doing. And the fantasy conversations will be had. Rest assured, we have all off season to dissect fantasy football. So if you're dying for fantasy football, we've got some articles that are already in the works over for our buy lows and our targets for fantasy this off season. And we're going to have a lot of fantasy football conversations in the off season. But right now, there's still football. And while we have all this time in the offseason to talk about fantasy, let's talk about football. So that's what we're doing. So that's it. We'll see you guys on Wednesday. And we
are
out.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Leather Brains. If you enjoyed the show, please consider subscribing and leaving a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast app and YouTube, as well as following us at Leather Brains on Twitter and Instagram. If you're looking for specific fantasy advice, including draft advice, trade insight, starts and sits, or even if you want our thoughts on your sports bets, please feel free to send us a DM on Twitter for an answer and a chance to have your question featured on a future episode. Again, thank you for tuning in, and we'll be back before you know it.